Our speakers are a married couple, Kim and Mike Barnes. They are communications experts. They're going to be talking about communicating with confidence in a virtual world. They have each spent 30 years on the air. Now, as Barnes Team Media, they coach clients for on-camera impact in virtual communication, video and media interviews, and public speaking. Kim was an award-winning reporter and news anchor for 15 years, including more than a decade at KVUE in Austin. She also taught television news reporting at the University of Texas and has continued to do so on-air work since she left the newsroom. Mike Barnes was an award-winning sportscaster at KVUE for over 29 years. He was named Best Sportscaster in Austin 17 years, good Lord, and Best in Texas 4 times. Mike and Kim have a 24-year-old son who's a graduate of Texas A&M and a 21-year-old daughter who's a senior at UT. This dynamic duo knows how to make a great impression on camera or in front of a room. To connect with either Kim and or Mike, click on their LinkedIn profiles. And I took advantage of one of their programs, and I found that they are wonderful. They're encouraging and helpful and with lots of good information about how to make your very best impression on video. So with no more delay, and thank you so much for being patient. Take all the time you need. I know we tell you roughly an hour, but you have an hour from now, so you get a late start. So take all the time you need.
Wow. All right. Well, Kathy, thanks so much for having us. We are excited to be with you and hope that we can shed some great information and insight and encouragement to help you in your job search, all of you as well.
Yeah, I know it's been 13 months since we've been in the pandemic, but it's still a brave new world out there. And doing well on video, on camera is huge. It's going to be big for you.
And as Kathy mentioned, making an impression is so important no matter what you're doing. And I know you're spending a lot of time working on your resume and your LinkedIn profile and all of the things that you're going to do to prepare for interviews because you want to make that good first impression because it is so important.
And think about in real life, in person, when you walk up to meet someone for the first time, you walk into a boardroom, a meeting room, and meet a large number of people. You want to make a great first impression. And if you walk in and you've got a flashlight shining on your face, or you walk in looking haphazard and you've got your hair all over the place, you're not dressed appropriately, you're slumped down, you're leaning, you've got bags of food with you, it just doesn't make a good impression. And yet so many people show up that way on video, on Zoom. We don't want to do that. And that's what we're going to talk about right now as we communicate with confidence in a virtual world.
And the first thing that we're going to have you do is I want you to grab your phone, assuming that you're not on it, to connect to the meeting. And I want you to take a selfie of yourself, not smiling. And I know that feels a little bit weird because we tend to want to smile.
She's setting you up for failure. Warning.
Yeah, that is true. I actually am. I really am. However, I do think that what you learn from that will hopefully be very insightful and helpful for you in your virtual communication as well as your in-person as well. And we would love for you to put in the chat because we want to make this as interactive as possible because that's how we learn. And one, it just helps us make sure that we're talking to people. So it's more fun for us too. And if you are so inclined, we would love for as many of you to turn your cameras on as you feel comfortable because it does make it more fun for us.
We're used to years on TV with a producer in our ear talking while we're talking, so you're not going to interrupt us, bother us at all. Trust me.
Yeah. So if you have a question, you're welcome just to unmute yourself and start and ask that question, put it in the chat, whatever makes it most helpful. So as you take a look now at your selfie, look at it and see what emotion are you conveying or how do you look? And put that in the chat. Do you look engaged? Do you look interested? Do you look curious? Do you look present?
Happy?
Or perhaps do you look a little tired or bored, old and tired, tired and bored, or annoyed or frustrated, or any of those other emotions that you might have? Now, granted, I know that I asked you not to smile. And so that is inherently not necessarily a pleasant look on our face. However, it is really important to know how you can kind of just really easily tweak that.
Yeah, I told you she was setting you up. And yet so many of us show up that way oftentimes when we're on video.
Because, a lot of times we're either joining the meeting or we're frazzled a little bit and we're late to get on the Zoom meeting or the virtual platform for the interview. And, that's the time that you get that rainbow circle on, if you have a Mac, that just can make you just so anxious because you've clicked on the link to join the meeting and it's just your computer's not cooperating. And so you're joining the meeting and you've got this frazzled look on your face. And that might be the first impression that you're making.
And you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. And that is such a key, because you want to make that good first impression and really connect through your eyes, through your face, through your smile with the person that you're talking to.
And certainly when appropriate, smiling is always good, because that is going to just make ourselves light up a little bit more. It helps us, the difference between if you have just a face, a resting face and a smiling face, it shows in our eyes. And so we want to be aware of that. Now, you don't want to go like this the whole interview. That would be kind of creepy. And frankly, your cheeks would start to hurt. So think about, what if you just activate a couple little muscles and you just have a little bit, I call it just sort of a grin or a pleasant look on your face. And that can make the other person feel more comfortable. And I believe it helps us look like we're paying attention, like we're interested, like we are engaged in the conversation.
Again, think about being in person. It's rare that you're going to walk into a meeting, to a meeting room, and have that sour look on your face. You're going to look pleasant, try to look pleasant, unless it's going to be a really bad meeting. And you want to convey something positive. And then you want to do the same thing on video. And we're going to say that over and over, but it's so much in person, so much the same when you're on video.
Even though it feels potentially very different.
Yeah.
I like looking at some of the comments. Haggard, my mess. I need some makeup. Bored, unapproachable, deep thought, haggard. Exactly. So again, it's just something to be aware of. And these things are things to think about when you're in person as well. Because the biggest challenge is that as much as it is like we're in person and we want to communicate like we are in person, this is what we think of. Typically, when you think of communication, you think of being part of an audience, or maybe you're the presenter, or you're part of a team meeting or an organization, or you're doing a job interview in person where you can see the other person on the other side of the table or sitting next to you.
You see live people and you draw energy from that because you see their smile. You get the warmth that they have. You get the inquisitiveness that they have. Whatever it is that you're trying to gain from them, you get it because you're in person and you can feel that energy around them. But in today's world, it's more like this. It's one person alone in a room with a computer monitor and a camera, just trying to talk to an inanimate object.
And that can feel a little bit awkward. And I noticed somebody just posted that they have told that they have a resting, angry face, and it's frustrating. And again, so that's where that grin maybe becomes even more important, because we just want to make sure that our expression, and same is true with our body language and how we're carrying ourselves. We just want to make sure that our expression is conveying the emotion that we intend. And if there's a disconnect, then that's going to be confusing and potentially distracting for the other person. So,
and you know that in person, we've been taught since we were little kids by our parents, our teachers, instructors, anyone that we were around, our bosses, to how to carry yourselves, how to introduce yourselves, how to look good in person as you're meeting people. And yet in today's video world, being on Zoom all the time, we still see a lot of people looking like this.
Now, these are certainly potentially a little exaggerated, but have you seen that guy or gal? Have you been that guy or gal? And especially when you are showing up for a job interview, we always say that anything that is a distraction takes away from making your message heard. And so we don't want to do anything that potentially distracts them and keeps them from understanding what we're saying and why we are the perfect candidate for this job, right?
And again, it goes back to being a young person, whether it's an elementary, middle school, high school, college person, whatever it may be. When you're young and you're taught things about how to present yourself, how to stand up straight, how to shake hands well, and all those things.
Look at people in the eye.
Look people in the eye. And yet you don't see these things on video because so many people think, oh, it's just video. I'm just going to sit back here and relax. It's not a big deal, but it is. It's so big, especially when you're trying to make that great impression.
So would love to get a sense from you as far as what are the things that maybe are challenging for you when it comes to being virtual? Is it the working the technology? Is it the fact that you're on camera and that really makes you uncomfortable?
Maybe it's not being face to face. As I mentioned earlier, seeing someone in person just a few inches away, or maybe it's the fact that you're hitting the wrong button on technology, especially with Zoom, or maybe it's something else. And go ahead and put that in the chat if it's what it is that still bothers you, again, 13 months into this.
Kids and dogs at home. Yes, that is absolutely a challenge. Mike was running before we got on to make sure our dog was out in the back because she'd been quiet all morning. And all of a sudden, I guess the mail truck drove by and she's barking like crazy.
And she's still inside. So cross our fingers.
Oh, I thought you put her out. Okay.
She didn't want to go outside. It's rainy, so she hates the rain.
So it's again, being aware of what are the things that are hanging you up, if you will, so that you can set yourself up for success in the best way possible. So Alyssa, we're going to talk about looking at the camera exactly, because that is such a key point. Small apartment,
poor lighting,
no good space for videos, screen sharing. And I think one of the challenges could be too, is that you may be using different technologies depending on the company, because some maybe use Zoom and some use WebEx and some use Teams, and they are different. And we frankly, just with all the presentations we've done in the last year, we certainly have favorites and ones that when we know we have to be on that platform, we think, oh, I don't like that one as much. So, it's being used to all that different technology, but just knowing the things that you can control so that you're going to look and sound good and then can focus on your message. Dog barking
pauses,
outside.
talking over each other. Yes.
Exactly. Husband working good nearby, kids potentially working schooling from home as well. And lots of problems. Before
we go on, because we still have lots of stuff to talk about, but the thing to remember about all of this, everything that we're talking about, whether it's the husband working, the dog barking, the awkward pauses, is it's never going to be perfect. Nothing you do on video is ever going to be perfect. And I know that from 30 years on TV as a sportscaster, that I was never perfect. I tried to be the best I could be, but I was never perfect. And it's the same thing for all of us, because you'll find someone, if you talk to 100 people, you'll find at least one person who says, I don't like the way you said this, or I don't like the shirt you wore here, or the dress you wore here, or the lighting here, or the background here. There's going to be something. So you're not going to please everybody, but you want to make it the best it can be to please as many people as you can, because that really helps.
And so much of doing an effective interview is making a connection and building that relationship with the potential company. So now I want you to take that selfie and look at it again, and then you can delete it if you want to, but I want you to look at it again. And Alyssa brought up a great point that I want you to be thinking of. Where are you looking and who are you looking at if you were the person that you were looking at? And what I mean by that is, when you took the picture, were you looking at yourself or were you looking at the camera?
Yeah. Did you look in the middle at yourself like you're looking in the mirror, or did you look up here at the camera lens, or to the side, depending on how you have your phone being held?
Positioned. Exactly. Yeah. So put that in the chat if you would. Let's see, what did people say? Okay. Are you looking at yourself, which feels totally normal, because one, we're either used to looking at ourselves in the mirror, and two, especially when we're on a virtual meeting, that's how we feel. We want to feel like we're talking to somebody. And so we're inclined to want to look at a person. However, the thing to remember is that if I were to walk up to Mike and we had an interview and I said, oh my gosh, I am so impressed by your company. I've been checking out the website. I can't wait to tell you why I'm so qualified to take this position. How would he feel?
Just looked at my ear.
So you either wonder, what are they looking at, or what is wrong with my ear? And yet, when we're on camera, that's how it feels to the other person. So I'm going to put myself on gallery view here so I can see some more of you. So if I look down at Lena and I'm looking right at you in the eyes, I can see your eyes. Does it feel like I'm looking at you? Yes. Will you just nod or wave? Yeah. No. Or Woody, Woody, I'm looking at you right in the eyes. I can see your glasses. I can see the prints behind you. Does it feel like I'm looking at you? Exactly. So if I want every single one of you to feel like I'm talking right to you, I look at the camera. And I know it feels really weird, because you want to, especially in an interview situation, you want to make sure that you are kind of reading their body language and, do they look interested? Do they look kind of curious? Do they look like this is a good answer, or is this a bad answer? And so it gets a little tricky, but it doesn't mean you have to stare at the camera the entire time.
Yeah. It's not a staring contest. You want to connect. And that's how you connect, is looking someone in the eye. But you don't have to say, oh my gosh, Mike and Kim said to look at them. I'm not even, I blinked. I messed up. They said even not to blink. I'm just going to stare them. No, you don't have to do that. You can look away at anything you need to. If you need to look down at your notes and then look back up, if you need to look over here and look at the chat and look back up, that is fine. Look at whatever it is. Your phone's ringing. It's like, oh, who is this that's calling me? I've got to put that to the side and then look back up. But move your chin, because you don't want to be looking at the lens and then try to take a quick glance out the window, because I think I see a neighbor walking by. You didn't even notice that because I'm so fast, and now I see who the neighbor was. But now I can keep on talking to you and keep connecting. Mm-hmm. No, you see me because, again, our face is so big, so to speak, on the screen that you can see my eyes. So you see me having these what we call shifty eyes. Don't have shifty eyes. Move your chin. If you need to look at anything, notes, phone, anything.
Well, don't
on the
look at your phone during an interview.
Well, if it's if it's an important phone call and you want to make sure it's not something bad. But anyway, if anything happens that you need to look at something, move that chin and then come back up.
And if you need to be watching the person when they're communicating, when they're explaining the job, when they're asking you questions, and you want to really get their impression, that's totally fine. And one thing that is very interesting that we have just discovered is that almost every phone and most every computer, you do have to look right at the camera. Now, there are new webcams, and we actually just got one that's a Logitech Brio. And what's weird is that in this one, if I look up at the camera, it's above. And it's because there's some software in the software of the webcam that somehow strangely adjusts. So we're having to learn to look actually at a different spot. So if you have, so always, if you get a webcam, especially, test it and make sure that when you are looking, maybe practice with somebody else and make sure, okay, is this the right spot? Because we had to quickly learn that, okay, if I look at the camera in this particular case, I'm not looking in the right place. Yeah. So I have to find another spot, which makes it a little bit easier to look at the screen and it feel like you're looking at the camera. But again, this is the first webcam we've run across that does this. Yeah. So most of the time you want to practice looking at the camera and again, make sure that you know how to adjust. And
we'll talk about it more in a second, but Kathy asked about it. Looks like you're looking at the camera, but looks like your camera is a bit higher than eye level. Is that correct? Yes. No. And it's not designed. We didn't design it that way. It's just because of the way the monitor is sitting on something to have a raising desk to be able to stand up or sit down. And then the camera being up on top of the monitor, it's a couple inches higher than our eyes. And I'm a little bit taller.
It's a little closer to your eye level than mine.
But it doesn't have to be exactly at eye level. You want it to be pretty close. It's kind of like in person. Again, going back to in person, when you're in person with somebody, and chances are you're not going to be, really that close to them, violating their space. But when you're talking to somebody, even if you're a little bit taller or a little bit shorter, it's going to look like you're pretty close to eye level, because you don't want to look down on somebody to make them look inferior. You don't want to look up on somebody or upon somebody to make them look superior. You both want to be on a level playing field, so to speak. And that's the key about keeping it pretty close to eye level.
So the biggest thing to remember when we actually laugh, #look at the lens. We say that all the time. And I think the biggest things to remember are that it does feel unnatural. So it just does. And so just being aware of that kind of helps make you feel a little bit more comfortable sometimes, where you just feel like this feels weird, and just know, yep, it does. But we also know that it's the way we make eye contact. And when we make eye contact, that's how we make a connection. And that's how we build that know, like, and trust factor and build that relationship. And that's when we're looking for a job and we want to find that good fit for us. That's so much of what we're doing.
And yet we still see so many problems, even on video like this. Hey, thanks for having me today. Just finished a run.
Oh. Okay, so now we're going to play a little game. We're going to see what are all the things that are going wrong.
It's kind of like playing Where's Waldo. You're going to see so many things wrong. And we'll start with the easiest thing, what we just talked about, is what am I looking at? I'm looking at the monitor and not looking at the lens. And you just can't connect. And I know that we keep harping on that, but it's so big to be able to look at someone in the eye, A, just to connect with them, but B, when you're communicating with someone, when you want them to see the passion that you have for this job, for this interview, for being involved in this company, it comes through the eyes. Yes, part of it comes through your voice. Yes, the words that you use, the expressions that you use, the tone that you use, the rate change, pace change that you use. Yes, there's a big thing about your voice, and we talk about that a lot in our workshops. But your eyes control your emotions. You see so much about someone in their eyes. If they have that blank stare, like, I don't know, I don't really think I'm going to fit in here. I'm kind of confused about all this. Or, oh my gosh, look at him or look at her in the eyes. And she loves what she does. You can just see how much passion that she has. Looking someone in the eye, even on video, is huge.
And if it's helpful, put a little sticky note by your lens. Or I just heard the other day, get those little googly eyes, that are from the craft store, and put them on there. Again, if it just helps you know, okay, I got to remember, look back up at the camera.
Yeah.
Okay, next. And we'd love for you to put, let's see. Somebody's, light source, can't see the face. Windows
picked out everything.
That's right. Face too small. Not looking at camera. Okay, perfect. We're going to go through. But yes, so many things that you could fix. And again, so many of these things that if you just did one of them, it's not going to be a deal breaker. But there are so many things that you can do that are subtle, that one at a time add to our credibility and our ability to build a connection, and other things that we do that just take away. And so we just want to make sure, obviously, that we're just not doing anything extra to take away from our credibility.
A question about, is the eye contact point on the Brio software adjustable in the camera settings? We have not seen that yet. If it's there, it's hidden.
Right. So we've actually not been able to figure out, except that it's automatically not looking at the camera. And it's really weird because it's just a little bit down. So that the camera is fantastic. And so we love the camera, but it's playing with trying to just make sure. So as long as put a little sticky note. Right now we have a sticky note, frankly, that says, look here, it has an arrow, because I'm so used to looking at the camera all the time that I'm having to learn not to. But again, this is a very rare case to do that.
Cedar says picking it out and doing it, two different things. And it's hard. Yes, it is. But look at this next thing, the bright windows. Anytime that there's anything bright behind you, it's trouble, because it's going to distract the viewer. The viewer's you're drawn to light. So you're going to be looking at that light instead of looking someone in the eye.
So if you have bright lamps behind you or things like that.
And second of all, it affects your picture, because the cameras today are so good that it adjusts for that bright light, makes everything else a little bit darker. So it'll make you a little bit darker. And chances are, unless you have really, really, really good lighting on you, you're going to be darker than you should be, and not as well lit as you should be. So Cedar, like you said, picking it out and doing it are two different things. On this picture of me, the video of me, just adjust the camera for our left, my right, so that you don't see those windows.
Well, and use that natural light in your face, because you always want to have more light in front of you. And this is an example of what happens when you also have windows coming in from the side, is that one side can potentially be lit and then the other side is dark. And so you just want to balance that out. But just think, more light in front of you than behind you, and potentially from either side. And
like, for instance, in this room, if I was able to turn and face the windows, that would be great, because natural light is so good to be used for the lighting on your face. I like to say you have to be selfish when you're on camera. Think of yourself as the star. I know that's kind of sounds funny, but you're the star. You want the spotlight on you. So put the light on you. Well, in this case, if I turn toward the windows, that would be good. If you can't, because of your desk situation, your computer situation, then what I need to do is put light on my right side, our left side, as you're looking at the picture here, so you don't have that shadow on the face.
Right, to balance it out. Because that is the trick sometimes, is that you may look in your house and think, okay, these are the windows, but then I've got my kitchen behind me, or that's my bed behind me, or I have some other background that I don't necessarily think is ideal. And so that is the tricky part, is that we're having to try to figure out where can we find the best options. And hopefully we're going to give you some ideas of, just finding those little places. So moving forward, another thing that is potentially a big distraction is that ceiling fan, because it just is whirring over. And I'm sure you've all seen the meeting or been part of a situation where you've got somebody and the ceiling fan is actually looks like it's on top of their head even, and just like a little whirly hat. And so again, just a distraction, because like, what do we say? If they're distracted, what are they focused on? The distraction, and not on you.
And it's just a ceiling fan. We've all seen ceiling fans. A lot of us have ceiling fans in our homes. So it's not like it's that unusual. But when you see that motion, again, any type of motion behind you, kind of like the light, any motion behind you, is going to attract attention. And yeah, someone's going to look up, see it's a ceiling fan. I don't know, is that a good ceiling fan? Yeah, okay. And then come back to me. But if it's a job interview, and the most important thing you say, the biggest thing you've said, you're going to say, and you've been preparing for a week to say this one big thing. If at that precise moment, you unluckily have them look at the ceiling fan and go, what's that ceiling fan? Wish he'd move his camera down, and miss that one point. And if they miss just one word, it may be the most important word that you say.
And one thing to keep in mind is that typically if you can see the ceiling, so if you can even just see the ceiling at all, so that you see the ceiling fan or a can light, this one, the can light, if it had been on, would even be another distraction. And that's the angle, because you can adjust the angle. And generally, if you're standing, sometimes it's a little trickier, especially if you're tall, just to be able to hide, to avoid the ceiling completely. But oftentimes, if you're sitting, if you can see the ceiling, it means your angle's off. Yeah. And so you just want to make sure that you are raising up your computer, make that lens up as close to eye level as possible.
And a good way to tell this is what we call the headroom, the space between the top of my head and the top of the picture. That's headroom. You don't want that much headroom. I like to compare it to a school picture. Think about your kids. If you have kids, and when your kids bring their school picture home from elementary school or middle school or high school, and they have that school picture, chances are their chin's not going to be at the very bottom, and all that headroom, kind of like this picture. They're going to be where their head is near the top part of the picture and then part of their body, and they're going to fill up most of the frame, as we call it. Here, I'm barely in the frame. It's just from my neck up.
Looks like your sort of chin sort of floating on the screen.
Yeah. So you want very little headroom, and that will take care of seeing the ceiling.
And then also, I saw that Cedar talked about starting the camera function on your computer and checking the picture. We're going to talk about that, because that's such a smart idea to make sure that you are going to show up in the way you want. Does the Brio have adjustable levels of face smoothing software? Sort of.
Yes,
sort of. It's the contrast. Yes. It's not like the Zoom touch up my appearance feature. If you're not familiar with that one, it's not quite like that. It's more of the contrast.
It's not contrast.
The bright.
No, I forget the word that they use. Sharpness, I think it is. It's sharpness. It's adjustable, and it can change. It's not like Zoom, but it is adjustable. Yes.
Right. So you don't want to make yourself blurry, but there is
too soft of a focus.
Yeah, too soft. But that is something that you can do. And certainly your appearance, and you can hardly see because we just see mostly just your chin. But you heard him say, I just came back from a run. Obviously, if you're, I would imagine if you are doing a job interview, to be dressed appropriately for the situation, depending on, again, what kind of job it is or that kind of thing. And one of the things too is thinking about, how do I show up in my box? Am I filling the space? Am I, they don't have the context of seeing your whole body. So if you're fidgeting with your clothes because there's something about it that makes, shoulder comes up or the neckline goes off or whatever, anything that you're doing that's fidgeting, again, is going to be a distraction potentially just for yourself as well as for the other person.
Yeah, we talked about lighting. You want to have the lights in front of you. And if you're wearing glasses, you want them a little bit higher so that the glasses don't reflect, and you don't want as much light behind you. But background is also a key, and background is very, very subjective. Yes, very subjective, kind of like interior decorating around your house. Your neighbor may not like the way you've designed your house, decorated your house. You may not like the way your neighbor has decorated their house, but you want it to be the best it can be. Here, we love this room. I'm able to have a little bit of a sports theme to it.
It's like the only part of the house that he gets some stuff in.
My son's baseball pictures are up there from his days playing baseball in high school, but do you really want to see something like that where it's like, hey, who's that? Oh, you think that's him? Or is that his son? Who is that? What team is that? Again, if they're distracted, they're not paying attention. Hey, who's that dancing? Yeah, that's me and my daughter. But do you really want to see that?
No, we don't.
No, you definitely don't want to see the video. But do you want to see that? And do you want to be to where it's distracting? There's a number 20. I wonder who number 20 is. I can't tell what that is. What is all that? Even the flag. Some people have said something about the flag, because every once in a while I'm in a meeting in that room, and they'll say, hey, what's that big flag? Why do you have the flag? Yeah, sure. If I went into the long story about it being flown over the Capitol on our wedding day, that's pretty neat. But do you want to talk about that in the job interview? Maybe not. The whole key is that it's so subjective about your background. So whether you want something that's a solid wall, all bookcases, half and half, like we have behind us right now, you're never going to have it perfect. You want to make it the best it can be and relating to what you do. You know, if as a former sportscaster, if I was interviewing for a sportscasting job or for a job with a team and I had a bunch of sports memorabilia behind me, that might make sense. If I'm interviewing for something about
in the medical
field, I have a bunch of medical stuff behind me or pictures behind me, that might make sense. Make sure it relates to what you're doing.
And just trying to figure out something that's just not distracting, because it may not be that you can find something that's completely relatable, but you don't necessarily want it to be the opposite. So if Mike was interviewing for a medical job and had sports stuff behind him, maybe it's a conversation starter, maybe it's a distraction.
Yep.
You know, you just have to decide. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people have found, and frankly, we've found as well, is where is a good place for me to be able just to sit and be able to create a little space. And in one case, the beauty of being virtual is that nobody sees what else is going on. So you don't see you don't see the mess on my desk right now. You don't see if there was stuff on the floor. You don't see anything on to the sides of us. You just see what's in our box. Yeah. And so just being aware of what can I do to create, is it a nook? Is it just a little bitty space that I can adjust so that I feel like, okay, I'm putting my best foot forward and this is how I'm doing it. So here's a great example of a client that we worked with in San Antonio, and we saw her just, in her box, and we said, wow, you look fantastic.
That looks really good. I don't like the lamp back there. It's not too bright, but just the fact that there's a light back there, you're attracted to it. And so the viewer could be distracted for a split second, but otherwise, look at that. She has a ring light to keep her well lit, the little holder for her phone, for her camera. She's got the plant. She's got a little motivational quote behind her. It just looks nice. And she says, wait a second, let me show you where I am. She's in her garage. That's the car right there. And she said, yeah, I have 4 kids. They're small. They're rambunctious. They're all over the place. The house is crazy. I had to come out here to be able to do my work. And she made it happen. And it's not like she took up the whole room, the whole garage. She found one little nook, one little space, and made it work for her. It's not perfect, but it's really, really good. And it's good for her.
And it could be that even maybe you have a place that, while you don't want to be in your bedroom and showing your bathroom or your bed, but it may be that you actually have, if you just flip this direction, and you have a little corner nook that you can stage, if you will, a little bit, or maybe you just want something that's very simple and plain. So I think that it's just, in some ways, it's just thinking a little bit out of the box and really just taking your camera and moving around and thinking, okay, if I want to be just right here, what can they see? And that's just a way that might help you come up with some ideas. Now, one of the things that I think is challenging is that many of us, and there was such a big push for very open floor plans in our house. So a lot of us have houses that are really open. So it's hard to find a wall in most of our living and from our dining, our living, and our kitchen area. It's all open. And so you can see everything. So it's hard to find just that wall to be up against. Yeah. But again, it's just thinking of, what are the options that I have and how can I make best use of what I do have?
Yeah.
And being a little creative sometimes.
Real quick, let me say, Woody asked about glasses and the reflection from the PC or the computer monitor. And yes, the best thing is to keep that light above you if you're wearing glasses. And when you have a monitor, well, how do you do that? But like someone said, you can dim it down a little bit. B, if you're using a webcam, you can always have the webcam in front of you, the monitor to a side, and you keep most of your focus on, again, the lens, the webcam, and then move your chin, turn to the side if you need to look at who's talking to you and who's talking. And that way you have light to one side, and then you can compensate that by putting some type of lamp or light on your other side, and that'll keep it out of your glasses. Again, it's never going to be perfect, but make it the best it can be.
And also just the angle that you hold your head. Yeah. And here's a little trick. If you put the temples up just a smidge, that sometimes can help a little bit too. But it is challenging that if you have glasses, that even a window in front of you can potentially create a little bit of glare. So you have to sometimes think about, okay, can I cover that bottom part so that I'm still getting enough light in coming above that will light me up well, but not create that glare. So it is tricky. And the placement of your lights definitely makes a difference to where then you're not, because, we've all seen I'm sure you've seen a meeting or an interview, even maybe the people that you've interviewed with that have the little circles in their glasses from a ring light. And I'll give you just a quick little thing here. If I go up here, see there, you can see mine. It's up there. So, but it's up higher so that if I'm chin down, normal view, I do have a little bit of a light on this side that's lower, but it just gives you an idea that you just have to, lighting is probably in some ways one of the trickier things, frankly, because if you're using natural light, it changes during the day. Morning time, it's usually so bright we have to close the blinds. This time of day typically is perfect, but because it's cloudy today, we have to have extra light. So lighting is something that really just is a little bit more trial and error than probably anything else, I think.
Definitely so. Definitely so. And of course, what we've mentioned about background is very subjective. And if you think, oh my gosh, because of the way my house is, because of the openness or because of the walls, I can't do anything, I need to use a virtual background. Well, Zoom gives us this silly grass. I'm sorry to say silly. If you work for Zoom, I apologize. But why does anyone want to have that grass behind you unless you are a landscaper? But
even then, it's
even then,
weird.
I don't know. But that's something that they give you. So our suggestion, if you can't have anything real, if you have to have virtual, then have some type of background. And again, whether it looks like wood or stone, that's kind of up to you. But maybe you can put your name or something about you. Here we just have our company logo on the side, and that can work well. Now the problem is, I'll stop share and just show you this way. Is that the problem is that when you're using a virtual background, I'll make it look like we're in San Francisco and use the Golden Gate Bridge.
Let's see if it switches. Sometimes it's a little slow.
Sometimes it's a little slow. But unfortunately, if
they're buggy.
Computers are so smart that they can pick out where you are and put the virtual background behind you. But if you start moving around at all, like I'm moving around now, and there Kim just disappeared.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't know, oh, wait, where does Mike's fingers end and where do they begin? If you have that green screen behind you, the big green piece of paper, sheet, whatever it may be, the computers are real smart in that way because they just take that color out and put in the background. And so Kim wouldn't be disappearing like that if we had a green screen. So that's the problem with virtual backgrounds is that, number one, you've got to make sure it looks good and it doesn't look kind of hokey. But number two, you've got to make sure that you're not going to be disappearing. Like you're in the best part of your job interview, and all of a sudden your arm disappears, your hand disappears. Part of your face disappears because you just moved, and
distracting.
It's distracting. So just be careful with the virtual background.
I don't think I've heard the word hokey in a long time.
Hokey.
One other little thing you can also do is there are green screens now that are literally like the sunshades that you put in your car that can sit on the back of your chair. So another option, if you really feel like a green screen is going to be your very best option, because a lot of it, what we're having to do is figuring out what is our best option. We don't have a perfect option, but let's make the most of what we have. And a couple of things too that are definitely things to keep in mind as well, and can affect everything that you're doing, is your internet connection. And I know this is really hard because a lot of times we don't have a ton of control over it, but if you do, and you can hardwire. And we had a 50-foot cable that ran through our house for months when we started doing so much virtual training, because the internet connection, when you see stopping and starting, it affects the video, it affects the audio, and it really just makes for not a great experience for the other person. So if at all possible, if you can hardwire your internet, that's going to be your best bet. Now that still doesn't guarantee. We still have challenges every once in a while where it just freezes for no unknown reason. And we are hardwired all the time. But again, just something to take into consideration if you have the option to be able to hardwire versus just, and if you do have to be Wi-Fi, there's mesh and there's all kinds of different ways to be able to try to help boost that. I mean, we had one client that said that she knew that when she was on Zoom or on virtual platform, she had to make sure that her kid wasn't on the Xbox, because you couldn't have somebody doing live streaming gaming and somebody on the computer at the same time. So just kind of knowing your limitations, I guess, are sometimes helpful.
You just never know with bandwidth. And one tip to tell you about is that on Zoom, you can take off HD, which, yes, it won't be as good of a picture, but it will need less bandwidth. So you can always do that if you're having internet problems. For
sure. Paige says that she's heard that a green tablecloth from the dollar store might work. And it might. It just needs to be kind of that, and it doesn't frankly even have to be that green.
It'll pick out whatever color you tell it to pick out. People use that color green usually because most people don't like to
we're
wear
not
that
wearing
color
that
green.
Color. Right.
So sometimes you'll see a blue.
Yeah, there's some that are almost this color.
Yeah, so you just don't have to, you can't wear that blue. It's whatever color it may be. When I was a sportscaster, I'd have to do the morning sports. I'd tape it on the weather wall on a green screen. And every once in a while I'd have a tie that had that little green dots, that same color. And the director would go crazy because you could see right through me because of the dots, just those little holes on my tie.
Well, and Kate is asking as well, that she's going to look for, she has a green tablecloth, but wonder if that type of green works.
Yes.
Again, the challenge is that you just can't wear the same color.
Right.
And it has to be, so it's different even than having a solid wall background because you're not usually close enough to it.
Yeah.
Some of it's the distance, isn't it? So it's
part of the distance, but a lot of it is it's the color and that the you're going to tell Zoom or whatever program you're using, take out this color and then it'll work. It'll work well.
And somebody else talked about when we were talking about the lighting and the monitors being a really bright light source that yes, how you can turn your computer. I know on a Mac, I could potentially make it the nighttime mode all the time, which turns everything darker. And that would be an option too, because you're just because like right now we have a white slide. And so that makes our screen really bright because it's white and bright. And so if we just flipped and made it the nighttime mode, that might make it darker to where then it's just not going to be providing light. Because in some ways we had one client that actually didn't have glasses, so she didn't have to worry about this, but she actually had two monitors and they were sort of 45-degree angles, I guess, a little bit. And that was actually her light source because that's all she needed was just the light from her monitor. So it's a lot of it's
trial and error.
And when you're on, remembering that you're on, we kind of joked earlier about that, sometimes we show up and maybe in not the way we would as we are in person, because frankly, sometimes we just forget because we are just this little bitty box. And even today, when we're in a meeting of, dozens of people, we only see maybe the gallery view that's in front of us. And so we can kind of forget that we're on. So just, being aware that we're on all the time, as long as our camera is on, of course. Right. And somebody had mentioned earlier about testing your audio and video. Great idea to do before you're popping on for an interview.
And sometimes, most of the time, if you click it on your settings, then before you join a meeting, it'll give you that little preview. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. It kind of depends on the settings that they have set up. The host has set up, but most of the time you can have it set up so you can see what your picture looks like, check and make sure lighting in the background look good and you look fine and that the sound sounds okay. You can check that and then join the meeting. That makes it so much better than trying to worry about it and getting on. Hang on, let me adjust this. Let me adjust that. You definitely don't want to do that in an interview.
Well, and even today, when we joined today's meeting, we didn't get that preview. And that's something that the host can decide. So most of the time it shows up, but that's again where what we did, here's a little secret, is that when we joined the meeting, we had our camera off, but I quickly realized, oh, wait, we didn't get to check our shot because that the test, our audio and video test didn't show up first. So you know what I did? I actually sent a quick note to Shannon and said, we'll be right back. And I exited the meeting. And then I actually just started my own Zoom meeting real quick so that I could check our spacing and then went, okay, perfect. Great. Let's rejoin today's meeting. So again, that's a great way to be able to do it as practice. And I think somebody said that in the chat as well, that you can practice, set up your own meeting either ahead of time as you're trying to figure out your situation or even right before you're joining that important interview, test it first. And that way you can go into it with even more confidence.
And you can do that even with your audio to where you could set up your own meeting and record just, 5 or 10 seconds, 20 seconds of it, just to hear how you sound, because audio quality is also so important. That's an external microphone, and we just switched to the internal microphone, and you probably hear the difference. We're in a small room that's carpeted. It's quiet. There's no kids or neighbors outside. The dog's being quiet. They don't have any kids at home. Everything is quiet. It's just us in the room, and we're only 2 feet away from the microphone that's on the computer. And yet it sounds different than the external microphone that's right in front of the computer, just because internal microphones are kind of like a fan. They've spread out and they bring in everything, all the audio that's coming in. The external microphone is more narrow. It's just kind of pointed toward us, picking up what we're saying and not very much of anything else. Now, if our dog started barking right now, you'd still probably hear it, but not nearly as distracting as the internal microphone.
And I've heard it said before that you can't squint to listen. And we've all been part of meetings. And when somebody's audio is poor, it's really difficult to really be part of the conversation. It's kind of like when you're on a cell phone and they hit that hill and you start hearing every third word. It's really hard to follow the conversation. And so you want to make sure your audio is good. And in some ways, I feel like the audio quality, sometimes making sure it's really crisp even trumps your video quality, just because they can make do if your picture's a little fuzzy or your focus is a little soft, or maybe your camera's a little grainy because the quality's not that great.
But they want to hear you.
Yeah. If they can't hear you, it's really difficult to have that conversation. Okay, awesome. Well, we would love to stay in touch with you. So if you'd like to be able to get in touch with us, either on our Facebook business page or here are our LinkedIn profiles. And I think Shannon also put them in the chat. So thank you so much for that. We also have a free virtual checklist on our website. If you're interested, you can just go to our website and opt in for that if you'd like.
BarnesTeamMedia.com. That way, if you have that checklist, you can check and make sure. It reminds you to check and make sure lighting is good, background is good, camera is good, everything looks good. So all you have to worry about is what you have to say.
And let's see. Sherry was asking what kind of a microphone do we recommend? We love the Blue Yeti. That's what we use, and it's great. We also have some other suggestions on our website. We have a resources page there that can give you just some other options and ideas as well. This is a more expensive microphone because this is what we do. But I think that there are other options as well that can really help. But just having even your old iPhone earbuds are going to be a better option often than your built-in microphone. So, and headsets, I think that's kind of a personal choice. I think that people are more used to them now than they were a year ago. That's for sure. And I think you just have to sort of figure out, what do you feel most comfortable in and what are your options? So I think that people are more understanding.
Especially in today's world, again, there's a little bit of grace. People realize you may be at home, you may have loud kids, neighbors, whatever it may be. I need headsets so I can concentrate. I need headsets with a microphone right here so you can definitely hear me and not have that external distractions of noise. Yeah. 10 years ago, if someone said, "Hey, I want you to wear this headset and go to a job interview," you say, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." But in today's world, people know that, people accept that. So I think you just need to figure out what's best for you. Set yourself up for success.
I remember during election coverage, we would always have to wear those headsets because it was so loud that we couldn't hear the producer in our ear. So that was really more the reason we were using them. So again, I mean, I love it if you don't have to use a headset, because I think I want to be able to see you just because I'm a super visual person. However, we also know that we want to make sure that we can hear you really well too. Yeah. So if you have interest in working with us further, there are, we tried to give you so much stuff today, but there are still so many more things that are really helpful in just the way you carry yourself and the way you communicate. The things we talked about today, just, you're going to look and sound good. And that way, then you focus on what you're saying. Yeah.
And we also talked more about that, focusing what you're going to say in our interview workshop, which is on demand. You can get the recording on demand at any time. It's about 45 minutes long, 44, I think, and change. And you can find out that information, BarnesTeamMedia.com/interview.
And Shannon is putting a special promo code that is just available for the people who are listening live today. So she's going to put that promo code in that will give you a discount off of that program. We also have a 10-day on-camera challenge and coaching program, which I know you're not necessarily creating videos, except potentially for the video interviews that you have to do. But we've had a number of people who came through the program who were doing it solely for their job search, because it just made them feel so much more comfortable and confident being able to communicate through the camera. And so that's a super fun program. Our next group starts on Monday. We usually run it about once a month or so, but that group starts on Monday. It's super fun. It is designed to work within your life. It's structured yet self-paced. And Shannon's also sharing a promo code for that one to help to let you save a little bit of money on that one as well. But it is one where we put you through the paces. You practice and you get feedback on every single video. So you can't help but get better, which I love that. And certainly if you have questions or want some individual training and coaching, that is something that we love to be able to help people with as well. Okay. Any quick questions?
Any questions? We saw some questions on the chat, but
we tried to kind of answer as we went. So hopefully
Sherry asked about lighting, and one of the main things about lighting is that there are lots of options that you can use. If you use a lamp, oftentimes that will work. Whatever you have with you and around you. One thing to think about is the color of the light, if that makes sense, because sometimes you'll have a soft white light bulb, which kind of gives you a yellowish tint. Mm-hmm. We suggest the daylight light bulbs because they're more like the outdoor light. So that works well. But otherwise, if you want to use an LED light, a ring light, different types of light, a lamp, different types of things. Sometimes you just need one kind of right behind the computer, so to speak. Maybe you want two on either side of you. Whatever looks good for you, play around with it. But the lighting is very important because you want the light on your face, not behind you.
Somebody asked, what tech info did you use to select Blue Yeti mic sound engineers from the TV station? No, this is not the microphone you would use if you were in an audio booth doing sound. Although, frankly, I used to use this I do voiceover work, and I used this for a long time doing that as well. There's different microphones that you might use depending on if you want to be right up on top of it versus it being a little bit further away from you. So this was actually just a little research that I did just online and a little trial and error as well. So I have a different microphone that I use now for voiceover work because this works well because it can pick both of us up pretty easily and we don't have to be right on it like you do on, is it a condenser mic? I get confused, but a condenser mic, I believe, is like what musicians often use because you have to be right on top of it. Or if I'm if I'm in a professional voiceover studio, they usually have a mic like that as well.
Shannon, I like that you say your light is fine, but the office looks like a hostage video. Your office looks fine. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that it's just tricky. And it's just figuring out what options do I have?
Somebody asked about is the Brio mic. Let me change it to. There you go. I just changed to the Brio mic. And we haven't even checked this.
And again,
but it's the same place as where the.
It probably sounds similar to our built-in microphone on the computer. The computer, would you agree? Does it sound? It doesn't sound as good as the Yeti, does it?
Oh, it sounds tinny.
Yeah, and that's just because it's not designed. I mean, they were designed originally, kind of for board meetings and sometimes for computers that don't have a camera built in. So they do their job, but they're not necessarily designed for audio quality, right? They're designed to be able to be heard, but not necessarily well. So, a bit echoey. And then think about too, if you're, and this is again, we're in carpet with low ceilings and a lot of stuff in this room. Have you ever been on the phone with somebody and you can tell that they've walked into their bathroom? Because it's all tile. And so there's a definite audio change. And so that is something that can come into play, whether you're, not that you'd be in your bathroom, but even if you have hardwood floors, or if you're having to do it in your kitchen where you have tile floors, those kinds of things, just again, not that you have to be mindful of, I mean, frankly, the very best place for audio in your whole house, guess where it is? Anybody know? Put it in the chat if you know.
Closet.
Your closet. Exactly. Absolutely. Your closet. Yes. If you're doing just voice, your closet is the very best place to be because there's all that sound absorption. I can't say that word. There's a lot of things that absorb the sound in your closet.
Kathy, you might remember from the 10-day challenge that I give feedback on the daily videos. And oftentimes people will I can tell they're in their kitchen or they're in their living room where they have a hardwood floor. And I'll say, sounds good, could sound better. Are you on a hardwood floor? Because you can hear the echo. And no, it's not terrible, but it could be better. And again, when you're showing up for something like an interview, it's like, okay, do you want to dress well or do you want to dress really good? And it's the same type of thing.
Really well.
Yeah. You want to sound your best. You want to be your best when you're on something like this. It's
right.
Like, yeah, that's good enough. That's usually not what you want when it's something as important as an interview.